All right, folks, it is 2 o'clock, so we'll sort of get things rolling. As a custom and things like that, we'll do quick introductions. I know most people know everybody, but for those who don't know me, I'm Ron Bissett with the Wellesley Police Department.
Phil Simonian, Yarmouth Fire Department.
Sean O'Brien, Barnstable County.
Kevin Morley, REPC.
INT.
Joe Gordon, Barnstable County Sheriff's Office.
Dan Howard, the Aries team.
Michael Laughlin, Harris.
Brian Gilhan, Sandwich Emergency Management, and HMCC.
Roy Jones, Cape Cod Regional Transit Authority, Barnstable County IMT.
Lee Calvin, Howard, GMD.
Tim Collins, Truro Fire.
Debbie Rogers, Falmouth Community Television.
Michael Small, Falmouth Fire. Chad Upson, Falmouth Fire.
Diana Gardner, MRC. Mary McLean, MRC.
Pete DiMatteo, Dennis PD.
John Caldwell, Chatham PD.
Rick Knowlton, Cape Cod EMS. Jim Sullivan, Dennis PD. Mike Clark, Barnstable PD.
Jim Roberts, Yarmouth Fire.
Jerry McDermott, Eversource.
Rachel Box, MEMA.
Lisa Crowder, Mass Department of Public Health.
Amy Alati, Barnstable County Emergency Planning.
Deirdre Arvidsson, Barnstable County Public Health Nurse.
Jeff Rossi, AmeriCorps. Jake Arringer, AmeriCorps. Patrick O'Neill, Red Cross.
Nick Leon, Plymouth and Brockton Street Rail.
Judy Scarafile, Major Crisis Relief Fund.
George Baker, Major Crisis Relief Fund.
Phil Burt, Barnstable County.
Christy Zinkis, Mass Property Insurance.
Laura Marin, Cottage.
Amy Henderson, AmeriCorps Cape Cod.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you. Remind everybody, if you haven't done so before you leave, if you would sign in. We do need to keep track of who attends our meeting, so again, please sign in. Part of the pack we had out back were minutes from the May 4th meeting. Look for a motion to accept the minutes, if there's one out there.
Motion to accept.
Motion to accept, second?
Second.
All right, any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? All right, thanks, everybody. Status reports from the subcommittees. The executive committee.
Executive Committee will be meeting next month.
All right. Any questions for the executive committee? Hazmat, Tier 2.
Tier 2. The Hazmat Tier 2 update. The hazard communication trainings were completed in June and May for the Barnstable County's laboratory staff. We also had trainings and attendance from the town of Falmouth, Bourne, and Barnstable at those trainings. If you are not aware from past meetings, the hazard communication right to know trainings are not only required by OSHA for municipalities and first responders, including police. If you encounter any hazardous chemicals as part of your routine job duties, that's a course we offer for credit. It's 2 hours, and I'm really looking forward to going to Bourne Fire next week, training all their shifts, so you don't have to worry about backfill overtime. I will come when it's convenient for you to do the training. We're also going to do the hazmat awareness training and hazmat ID training for the Monomoy School District at the end of this month.
Thank you. And Amy was almost kidnapped. We had a meeting with representatives from South Korea, and they actually adored her, and we're going to take her back, but we pulled her passport so she couldn't go and things like that.
It was actually really cool. There's a press release we printed to show you. It was pretty outstanding meeting, so yeah.
Very good meeting. Any questions for Tier 2? Health agents.
The health agents went on a learning tour of the Dennis Yarmouth Regional Shelter. It was requested as a training topic from the town of Mashpee, and this took place on June 24th. It was good attendance, good group. Now, why would a health agent go on a tour of a shelter? You might wonder, why is it relevant? They need to not only know the food service operation, sanitation issues of a shelter, but the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, recommend that municipal health officers conduct health surveillance at a congregated location, and that's so they can identify cases of illness, injury, and exposure within a mass care population, which a shelter can, cross into that. So especially they need to observe this for emergency incident planning. Our health agents on Cape Cod, Martha's Vineyard, and Nantucket have been doing related emergency planning and trainings under CDC requirements since 2005. We've had many trainings, so this was part of that agenda, and it went really well. They enjoyed the tour, it was very informative. And to go on record, we want to again thank Sandy Casham, the facility manager for DY. You've never met her.
She's awesome.
She's one of the greatest people you could ever meet. She's a public servant, and she gave them the tour, took time out of her day to give them a detailed tour, so it went well.
Excellent. Any questions for the health agents? IMT.
I'll take that, my fault. We'll have no meeting this month, next meeting IMT is in July. The team has participated in a number of exercises in the last couple of months, including the REPC drill well fleet, natural gas drill that was held on National Grid, I believe, in the town of Sandwich last week, 2 weeks ago. Everything's going well with the team, just preparing in order for the MAC and such hurricane season.
I know that the REPC, there was a request for a meeting. Orlando had the horrible accident. There was a killing and down there at the gay nightclub, terrorist attack. Provincetown, having a gay population, the concern was what would happen if something event was to happen there, so they reached out to the REPC. I couldn't go, but I know Phil went to it, IMT, had a representative there, just to reassure the different people that we do work well together, we do play well together, that we have many resources across the Cape to assist in any type of event happening. There will be local law enforcement, state police going out there, to the fire departments, regularly going out for mutual aid and things like that. So, just want to brief everybody that we had a nice meeting with everybody. It went well. Any questions for IMT? Sheltering Task Group.
Sheltering Group met just before this meeting. Preparing for our annual summer walkthroughs. Those dates are going to start coming in. So those will happen probably within the next 6 weeks, between now and I guess whatever the end of August is. Otherwise, just gearing up for hurricane season. Hopefully not after the opening shelter.
Sounds good. Any questions?
And we did have a nice presentation from Kevin. Kevin has been working on some videos, PSAs, and other things that we can do to sort of alert the public of just regional sheltering in general. And Kevin gave an update on that. So that'll be ready for the full group, not too far down the road here. You'll get to see all of our faces on video.
Great job. Any questions? American Red Cross.
The only update I have for you guys, just as was mentioned, for those of you that weren't at the shelter meeting prior to this, the sheltering supplies on Nantucket have been doubled, so the capacity now is for 200 individuals. Excuse me. Now that we're in our new fiscal year, I'm looking to do the same thing for Martha's Vineyard. Additionally, all of our shelter manager kits are in the process of being updated with some new paperwork, kind of streamlining that whole process a little bit, and just getting ready for inventorying everything and kind of going through all of the trailers and making sure everything is still in good working order.
Excellent. Any questions for American Red Cross? Nima.
Hello. Maggie Fiola, who is our administrative assistant at Region 2, has been transferred up to headquarters in Framingham. So if you call our office, you have to call headquarters instead. For the regional staff, you can just call our cell phones. That's the best way to reach us. We're supporting a program called the Corporate Emergency Access System. It's a credentialing system that will be used when the governor issues a travel ban. It's meant for the private sector. Doug Forbes is our point of contact on that, and he's happy to come out and do presentations and share about the program. And then the Cape Cod Emergency Traffic Plan is in its final phase. The vendor is completing the plan, and we will have our annual meeting sometime in August or September. And we'll do a seminar meeting to kind of go over the new plan and any change that they made this year. That's it.
All right. Thank you. Any questions for Nima? Okay. Is the Open Cape Liaison Task Group?
No report this week.
No report. All right. Citizen Corps.
Citizen Corps Council. Okay, one of the lessons learned in the disaster, after the disaster of 9/11, was the lack of coordination with volunteer organizations. who responded to that event. So in January of 2002, President Bush created the Citizen Corps Council, the umbrella organization for all the VOADs. So the Cape Cod Citizen Corps Council has been talking about trying to reach out to volunteer organizations active in disasters throughout our communities. If you know anybody who wants to participate, we have a lot of organizations that are already participating in the Citizen Corps Council, from the Medical Reserve Corps to the Aries folks, to CERT, to the Elder Services of Cape Cod, the Wampanoag Tribe, and so forth. So we're just reaching out, asking if you're a volunteer organization or you know someone, please get into contact with us. We'd like to have you on board. The next thing is recruitment. We're trying to recruit people for our organizations, so we've reached out to Cape Cod Community College, and we're in the process of doing not one but 2 recruitment fairs on their campus during the upcoming school year. And then finally, we're starting to network with the Shelter Task Force. I have a meeting with Phil Burke tomorrow, and then he's going to be our guest at our next meeting to discuss how we can be incorporated into the shelter volunteer.
Sorry.
That's that.
Very good. Any questions for the Citizen Corps? All right. Aries.
Aries continuing, just like the rest of the volunteer organizations, to want to recruit, get people, although we have a little more, some of the technical requirement from some of the other services. We have been relatively stable and successful. We're continuing to improve at our shelter locations and communications capability with UHF and with amateur radio operations. We're also building out here and following through on getting antennas that will be here for the MAC, both for amateur radio and for the incident management team to communicate both region-wide, statewide, worldwide if necessary, and to our partners such as Red Cross and et cetera. So that's going to be critical, and also Aries is planning its annual summer exercise coming up at the end of the month, last Saturday of the month, and we'll be, usually those that follow my scenarios, it'll be a kind of a doomsday type scenario like it normally is, because I like to push it a little bit. And we get a lot of good volunteer participation in that, so we'll issue a report on that when that's done. Thank you.
Any questions for Aries? Sheriff's Office.
Sheriff's Office is currently planning its fall CERT class, so if any communities on the Cape would like a CERT class taught in your jurisdiction, please let me know. I'll be more than happy to plan that out with you. That's it.
Any questions for the Sheriff's Office? Public information.
As was mentioned by Phil, we've made good progress on the video material for educating people about the shelters and the volunteer opportunities that exist. I'd also like to draw your attention, it has been brought up earlier, about the visit from the South Korean team doing research on managing hazardous materials. And it was a remarkable, I guess about a 3-hour session. It's sort of like what you see on TV. There was a young lady translating, and it was very painstaking to go through the questioning. But I'd like to turn this over to Amy, because she was the star of the show with the type of knowledge that they need in South Korea to bring their hazardous materials management into the 21st century.
They made several stops on their visit to the East Coast. They had gone to other locations, but they spent several days in Boston. And how they initiated this, one of the primary things they wanted to learn about was our EPRA law. The reason you're all here and we exist is the EPRA law. Do you know what the EPRA law is? Emergency Planning Community Right to Know Act. It was based on an incident that killed thousands in Bhopal, India. With that chemical release and killing all those citizens, we enacted this law in the United States in '86. Well, they know about that. They don't have similar programs that we have. They came here, and one of the primary places they went to meet to learn about EPRA and how we implement it in Massachusetts in terms of a Tier 2 chemical inventory program for emergency planning was EPA. EPA and myself work hand in hand for over a decade to collect these inventories, to use the information for training, for response, for equipment purchase. So with that information from EPA, they wanted to know, well, where are your highest rates of compliance? Well, I mean, I'm going to toot my own horn. We have 422 facilities that report for Cape Cod and Nantucket. So they made an unscheduled stop down here to not only ask Sean all about the REPC, how it was formed, in detail. It was like an interrogation. You looked like you were being, definitely questioned intensely, and I saw the list of questions beforehand. Yeah, they were very detailed. This was not a light visit, this was a very in-depth visit, and this panel has a director of this Environmental Research Institute in South Korea, so they have a very structured way that they were gleaning this information, but it was extremely flattering because they were very impressed with all of us and the things that they had to say. And what they did, literally, made a few more stops, went back to Korea, and I've talked to the director twice a week since they've gone back. And they are slowly implementing everything they learned. Now they had a video documentary made, which was actually kind of funny, the things they were telling us to do. Stand and talk to each other, and just kind of get some footage so they can show this back home and start to, get everybody on board. They are trying to completely duplicate what we're doing here, slow and steady, right? But every week he has questions. He wants to know about the safety trainings I do, and Tier 2 information. So he stays in touch, he gets different documents, and they're putting it in place in South Korea. This is major. This was a major international, unprecedented visit. I don't remember any time in 12 years ever having a foreign delegation come to talk to us specifically about what we do in this region. Now they're taking it back to that country. So it was really something. So there's a press release on the table, and they are just lovely. As serious as they were in the meeting, that's how warm and friendly they were outside of the meeting. So it was really something. So
I might add
wanted
that,
to share.
I'm sorry, I might add that Amy had the wherewithal the night before to go up on the web and learn a phrase in South Korean. So when it was her time to talk, she was able to say, "Nice to meet ya."
Yeah, don't put me on the spot.
And she also had a little basket of presents for everyone, so she really made the day.
Yeah. They fell out of their chairs and talked Korean.
Great job. Any questions for PIO? All right. Well, rumor has it that 2016 is going to have a hurricane season. So Frank's going to bring us up to speed, I think, or cancel it. No? Last chance, I've been asking all day, so.
Like to cancel it. First, thanks everyone for all of their help and coordination this last year. It's been kind of a rough one for me medically, but wanted to make sure I got down here and do the annual. I think I missed last year, so.
I will be your,
Sounds great. Everybody see me okay? Okay, that's good. Make sure the pointer's working. Sort of. Actually, it reflects, huh? All right. Welcome to hurricane season 2016. Hard to believe it's that time of year already. But it is. Now, our season really doesn't get going until a little bit later. But officially, of course, we look at the June 1st. This is one of the strangest years. We actually had a tropical cyclone in the month of January. That was just a freak occurrence, though. It doesn't happen very often, but it can show that something could attend tropical characteristics even in the off-season time. I just wanted to say, give a tribute to Dr. William Gray, who passed away a few months ago. He was in charge of the Hurricane Tropical Project and for Colorado State, and was the one who did the bulk of the hurricane forecasting. And they were pretty good as you can be with the data we do have. And we liked his forecast. We liked the way he did business. And he put in a lot of years. I think he did about 60 years, I think, into it, which is quite a bit. So we'll miss him, of course. That's his protege, Dr. Phil Klotzbach, to the left. He's going to be taking over. Just before Dr. Gray died, he made a promise he'd put at least 50 years of effort into the tropical project. So he's going to try to live as long as he can. But we like his type of forecast because they're not afraid to put the numbers down. Some of the NOAA stuff, when they say, well, between 6 and 12 storms or something, that's like me saying, well, we're going to get between 2 and 10 inches of snow, and it's generally not too good of a forecast. So, but we miss Dr. Gray and thank him for his years of service. Next. As you can see, originally, on average, we have about 12 named storms, 6 hurricanes. That's, of course, when a tropical cyclone gets to 74 miles per hour or greater. And usually 3 major hurricanes, which are Category 3. And we'll get into a little bit more about the Category 3 stuff a little later. Originally, we were going with pretty much an average season, and then they bumped it up a little bit in June. But as of July 1st, Phil Klutzbach and the group decided to bump it up to 15 named storms, 6 hurricanes, 2 major hurricanes. And you kind of wonder why we went up in the named storms and down in the major hurricanes, thinking that there may be a little less opportunity for intensity this year, but maybe more spin-ups than we normally see. Next. Hurricane season, the peak. Generally around September 10th. When you start thinking around 9/11, unfortunately, that's usually around the time of hurricane strike peaks. We haven't had many of those lately. And it's been that way for a long time. And you see that corresponds both, with hurricanes and, of course, tropical storms as well. Because that's when we have the greatest impact here in the continental United States is during that period, September. Next. We'll go quickly in this. This is just stuff we've done before. Anatomy of a hurricane. Basically, warm ocean water, rising air, rises, sinks, spins with the Earth's rotation, gets lower pressure at the surface, rises, cools, and as the air rises, pressure drops, and it intensifies more and more until we have what we call a hurricane at 74 miles per hour. Next. But warm temperatures are very critical. We talk about 80 degrees. There's some exceptions to that, but that's generally the rule. And so we often look, you hear people talk about the water temperatures as we get close to the season, and wow, water temperatures are exceptionally warm this year, things like that. They're actually not right now, and everywhere, but there's more involved to that, but that's for another meeting. Next. El Nino, we talked a lot about that last year, and going into the winter season. We were hoping it would bring a great deal of drought relief to California. What happened was a bust. They didn't get the drought relief they sought. They did get some snowpack, but didn't really help them much. And I'm afraid they're going to have a bad fire season out there, as we've already seen out there. But basically, when we talk about El Nino, we're talking about temperatures of, you see that red plume, that's basically warmer water temperatures reaching the surface, and it extends out like a finger. Next. And what that happens is it creates shear. It creates intense westerlies. And that tends to blow, when we have a storm, we like to have that rising air. When you come out of the bathtub or a shower and you open the door and that steam just rolls up because it's rolling up to cooler air. Well, what happens if you have a fan there? It blows it off, just like a candle. It blows out the ability for a tropical cyclone to form. So that's what happens when you have El Nino. We get a lot of that what we call shear, wind shear. Next. And instead of ideally being able to form with a rising column of air, it gets blown apart. And either we don't get a tropical cyclone or we get something much weaker in intensity. It's ironic that last year we actually had a fair number of storms, but none of them were very, very strong. Next. Let's take a look at the difference between La Nina and El Nino. This is important. With La Nina, we were looking, we said with El Nino, we're looking at these water temperatures extending from South America. And what that does, of course, is affects the trade winds. And the trade winds are going to make the difference because they're blowing off of the South American coast, and whether we have warm temperatures at the surface, we won't go into the reasons for that, or whether we have cold temperatures at the surface. When we revert to La Nina, which is the opposite, we talk about ENSO, El Nino Southern Oscillation, they're between these two extremes with a neutral period in between. Well, now we're heading into La Nina. We're thinking now that the La Nina, the cold being at the top of the surface, is going to probably peak somewhere around the time of the hurricane season, or maybe just thereafter. Now, when we have La Nina, it often suppresses hurricane development here in the eastern Pacific, but we get less of the westerly winds, less shear here in the Atlantic Basin. When we get less shear, storms, that steam, that heat is able to rise and cool, and we're able to get more storms. Next. And you can kind of see that a little bit. Fewer hurricanes when we're talking about it, and more hurricanes out here when we're dealing with La Nina. Some people keep asking me why they call it El Nino to begin with, and it's usually because they talk about the Christ child, because El Nino often peaks around the time of the Christmas season, and that's where it came from the boating industry, actually. Next. Features, tropical features. A lot of my updates you'll see, and Phil puts out, or if you're going with the Weather Service too, you'll often hear about tropical waves, and we talk about the periphery of the subtropical ridge, which would be like here, and they follow the trade winds until they find a weakness between the two, and then they start moving, veering up to the west-northwest, northwest. So we look for those breaks, or where there's any kind of low pressure in the middle, and we look for where that storm may sneak up at us. And that's what we kind of watch. If we get strong pressure and it's elongated, it'll often steer the storm into the Gulf of Mexico or towards Florida. If not, then we got to watch the East Coast. And that depends how that sets up each year. Next. This is kind of important for preparedness. That was Hurricane Wilma when it was departing the Yucatan Peninsula, heading towards Florida. Nice looking eye. It actually holds the lowest pressure in the Atlantic Basin. What was it, from around 882 or something like that? It was pretty low. That's low. Anyway, even lower than some of the ones I saw in the 80s. Wilma was the last Category 3 hurricane to strike the United States. That was 11 years ago. It's a long time. Can't remember the last time we had such a stretch without a Category 3 impact in the United States. You know what that means generally. People tend to forget or complacency sets in. I'm not just talking about the public, but also places like Florida, who the year before, in 2004, remember they were absolutely embattled with hurricanes. From Ivan to Francis, and Charlie. It was nasty. Next. So much so that they were ready to move Florida up to the Montana area. Enough was enough for them. But it's been 11 years, and they're really worried, and we should be worried too about complacency when it comes to these events. Next. Again, talking about tracks, we'll go through this carefully. You notice the similarity between a lot of the tracks. This was Bob in 1991. Almost a similar track to Carroll, formed down here by the Bahamas. Moved through this little box we have right off here by Albemarle Pimlico Sound. Most of our tropical cyclones that hit New England tend to come through this little area. There have been some exceptions, but not a whole lot of them. Next. This we get to Hurricane Carroll. Notice how similar it was. Formed down here, came across, up through that area, up through Connecticut. Next. 38 storm, a little bit different. 38 did not form down here in the Bahamas. It was a Cape Verdean storm that formed in Africa, off the African coast, I should say, no, Africa. And moved with the trade winds, encountered the westerlies, steered it up to the north, and all we knew was there was a big wind with very low pressure off of the southeast coast the night before, and the next day it was here. The famous story about the guy that bought his barometer because the bad weather was coming, and when he came back from the store because it was reading so low, his house was gone. So that's lucky he's still alive, actually. Next. Again, we show this, and this is old hat for some of the people who've seen my presentations. Notice the railroad bridge, the corner here, up at Wareham. Had to do a lot of rebuilding of the train tracks. Wouldn't have been any Cape Cod Fly or anything that day. Next. This is, remember, this is a bridge. Three of our nice guys in uniform, and one of the several hundred homes that littered the canal after the 38 hurricane. Just imagine the canal being littered with houses, and parts of houses. And imagine what would happen today with the populations that we have. Quite remarkable, and hopefully we'll never see it. But it does lie ahead for us someday. You can't avoid that. May not happen for 30 years. Could happen in a few months. Next. This is Providence, Rhode Island. Famous old buildings, trolley car. There's a nice pole there. If you go to Rhode Island, you'll see where the 17-foot watermark was, which is not nearly as high as we could expect in a worst-case scenario. In the worst-case scenario, we could see in Buzzards Bay heights in the 20-plus feet range. Next. I like to show newspaper headlines. You can see the deaths were actually quite significant. Even though it takes a long time to actually come up with how many people were killed in a storm those days compared to today when we're used to having things instantaneous for us. I always like to collect these headlines. Of course, the real scary part was this part about Hitler in World War II about to begin. But for us, it was about this storm. Next. And we can see VIX was in business even then. Hundreds were killed in New England. If you look over here, you can see even 30 dead in Cape Cod, New Bedford area, and it talked about the losses, 75%, 100 homes destroyed here, Fire Island, pretty nasty stuff. Today, many, many times greater due to population and people building where humans shouldn't build, but that's not my call. But next. And again, nice famous headline some of the data in the early coverage and about what happened in the canal. And it does wait for us someday. Hopefully it's not this year, but that's about where we stand. We're looking for an active year, not exceptionally active. We're not looking to reach the Greek alphabet again like we did in 2005. But there's an old saying in the earth sciences that something hasn't happened in a long time, it's probably going to happen sometime soon. So 11 years has been a long time for a strike. So be aware of that. Thanks for putting up with me for another year. And any questions or anything like that, let me know. With that, I'll let people get back to what they got to do for the meeting. Thanks.
Thanks, Frank. You'll send me the dates that I need to take my vacation when the storms are coming.
You'll get at least 2 days notice.
All right, thank you, my friend.
With a bill.
With a bill. Junk mail. All right, any questions for Frank? All right. News and open announcement. We have a returning guest. George. George.
Joe? Sure, sure. Do we have the floor for a minute, because I'm new to your procedure?
You do.
Like 3 minutes?
Yes.
So, my name is Judy Scarafile. I'm part of the Needy Fund, but it goes beyond that today. The Needy Fund, which I'm sure everyone is aware of, has been in existence for 80 years. We have a fabulous track record of helping thousands and thousands of people and raising close to $500 to $1 million every year to do that. As Hurricane Sandy left its mark, we put together a team 3 years ago to look at the idea of getting Cape Cod not only ready for a disaster mentally and being prepared, as Frank says, but maybe being ready financially. So instead of what Hurricane Sandy did, because they didn't have much notice, since that storm really should have gone straight and hit us, through the efforts of Mary Pat Christie and her team, they raised $42 million and helped 250,000 people after the fact, which is absolutely phenomenal. So they have a playbook, and we have learned from their playbook. So I'm the managing director of the new Major Crisis Relief Fund, which is an arm of the Needy Fund. It's under the umbrella. Joe is our director of volunteers, and George is our operations director. You know these two people even better than I do, and I know we couldn't have picked two better people to be on our leadership team. So what's our purpose? Even though our website, which is we're really called the Cape and Islands Major Crisis Relief Fund, but our website is majorcrisisrelieffund.org. We'll have flyers at the next meeting, but we're only 10 days old. So what is our purpose? Although I wouldn't say in print that we're third responders, but we essentially will come in after the disaster is over, and we'll come in with money. That's the goal. But beyond money, we'll come in with operations, which is George's department, and we'll come in with volunteers to help. So we can help first and second responders where we're needed. We want you to know about us, but we're not going to be in the way. Essentially, after the shelters close, we'll come in and help out. Well, give an example. George, tell your example of El Nino with the police chief from Dennis.
Well, during one of the winter storms, there was an issue in one of the shelters for adult diapers. And I think finally Mike took his card and went to the store and bought them because couldn't get a purchase order. Red Cross wasn't to the point where they were buying things yet. And it was just that gap that we were going to have a major public health crisis if we didn't get the diapers. There will be an arm, and it'll be the piece that I'll be helping with, that if there's something that's needed and you don't have time to go through the red tape, the fund will help you. I can't tell you what it is or what it could be, but it's that, filling that piece of the gap. Now, that doesn't mean that after the fact we won't look for reimbursement or we won't look for, another way. But if for some fact you needed 600 spaghetti ladles and it's not on the purchase order, it's not in the system, we'll be there to help you get that. And I'll be that filter, which pretty much means if you say you need it, then you say you need it. We'll figure out how to get it for you. It's not to fill in for FEMA, to fill in for Red Cross, and to fill in for all those things that are out there. But when they're not out there and Frank needs 10 more batteries, that isn't on a list, we'll be able to help with that. The biggest piece, though, is really the after the fact, when there are those things that SBA doesn't pay for, insurance companies don't pay for, and people need to get back to work. And they might need a tank of gas, they might need a car rental. We'll be one of those allied agencies that are sitting there at the shelters, at the relief desks, helping people like the Needy Fund does right now. The beauty is, different from the one fund in Boston that was set up after the fact, this is set up before the fact. The bank accounts exist, the annual audits exist, all those things are all set up. So there's a way to manage the money, so it's not all of a sudden Cape Cod has a disaster, where do we send the checks? We have a bank account, we have a website, we have some press stuff that'll be kept aside until it's needed, other stuff will be ongoing. So it's, again, no different than the RNPC, trying to be proactive on these issues instead of being reactive and missing the opportunity and missing the money. Because there will be people that will have money available to donate. They'll be looking for tax relief at the end of the year. They'll be able to come to the Major Crisis Relief Fund and make their donations. Or if there is a disaster, we already have the bank account open, the money can start flowing.
You want to talk about volunteers for a second?
Yeah, real quickly, you've heard it before, Amy Alatti was very instrumental, Susan Schneider, Frank, Dan, Diana, in putting together the volunteer reception centers and having the MOUs in place, so when a catastrophic event happens, the REPC can let us know that they need a VRC stood up, so we can get those spontaneous volunteers vetted and get them out to the volunteer organizations. That's where the VRC is going to come and play, so that when, in the aftermath of a major crisis event, REPC will send out the notice of what volunteer organizations need to be up and operating and what skill sets they're looking for. And Judy will let me know what they're looking for on their end to help get the money or the items that George has talked about distributed. That's where the VRC, the Cape Cod Citizen Corps Council, and everybody will come and play and help that out. So I think it's a great thing. Get on the website, take a look at it. It's an amazing thing, and I can't say, we're trying to get ahead of the curve here. It's a little, it's not $42 million like in New Jersey, but they started after the fact, and I commend Judy for getting us up before the fact.
So I'll just add one thing, I'm going to put you on the spot. But we have an awesome advisory committee in addition to our leadership team, and Sean is on our advisory committee, and I met with Sean once or twice. We've had phone conversations and emails back and forth, and check out this website before we go live. Do you want to add anything about how you feel that we fill a need?
I quite honestly, I think it's a nice mix to what we do. It's a great support function that we have here in Barnstable County. A few of us went down and we saw what happened in Sandy and took some drives around Queens and Far Rockaway. And just the damage that had happened to people's homes, to their businesses, etc. And any way we can support the citizens of Barnstable County, I think this just makes it even better. And it also puts us as one of the first areas in the state that has done it beforehand, and has actually put this together where we can provide a support function to our citizens. Been involved with this right from the beginning. I think it's been about 4 years, and this is a great opportunity for us and for your citizens to be able to receive a little bit of relief if there's a problem. You know, if it's buying blue tarps to cover up a roof, or the potential of a tank of gas in order to get to work, or for a business to somehow, you know, get a little bit of capital to get going again. I mean, because the sooner we get back to everyday life here in Barnstable County after a disaster, the sooner everything's going to be fine. And this is a great tool for us to do that. And I really want to commend Joe, Judy, and George, and all of the work of their committee. It's been impressive the way they've put this together. I think DeWitt Davenport has been involved.
Yep, Peter Meyer. It's been a great opportunity to really set a nice program up for our citizens and to help them out should there ever be a major disaster here.
And Sean, one other thing, it ties together the needy fund with public safety and emergency management. So I never knew it was there for an emergency management piece, but if you have 3 or 4 people burned out, or 4 or 5 people that someone was naughty in the house and the rest of the people have to leave, and Red Cross, it isn't their threshold, there's a connection into the needy fund that can go through their vetting process to help them with their emergency financial needs. There's also a piece that's still in the works that if we have a small scale emergency on the Cape, 50 people burned out of a housing development or some spot flooding and a water main breaks in Harwich and a whole neighborhood's evacuated, that it doesn't hit the threshold for MEMA or FEMA, but you still need something. The needy fund will be able to go in with their software and their stuff and start vetting people, and that we'll step it up a notch and bring some volunteers and be able to service those people too. Maybe not the night of the fire, but the next day or into the 3rd day when Red Cross starts to want to move them out of the hotel and they still need a place to go because the sinkhole is still sinking. It's another option for you to reach out, and then through the board of directors and Judy, and there'll be a small huddle, and we'll see, is it a needy fund or is it a crisis relief fund? And then they'll point to a pot of money to be able to help those people. So it's just one more, it's something that's always been there, but it's something I was never aware that was an option for emergency managers.
Any questions for the group? Lee?
How are we gonna get this information out to emergency managers? As Judge said.
We just did it.
Well,
And if they're not
I
here,
understand
Lee, you
that.
get more
Well,
money because they don't get it.
Exactly. My other question is, once the publicity is out about this group, you're gonna get 200 people from Harwich calling you for blue tops. How are you gonna manage all that?
We have a vetting process through the needy fund,
Okay.
and I mean, I can't tell you exactly how it will work because we haven't been there yet.
Yeah.
But with Joe's help with volunteers, and Amy setting up a volunteer bank, we're going to, as it goes along, we're going to figure that out. But we do have a vetting process taking place at the needy fund. I don't want to say on a 24-hour basis, 7 days a week, but it's pretty close what these folks do in the office. It's like the most phenomenal social service agency on Cape Cod that nobody knows about.
Right.
So it'll be tied in with the needy fund, and as George said, that's the vetting process that we'll use, but we'll beef it up for sure.
And for notification, Lee, too, one of the things we'll do is we'll create a link and a little bit of a blurb on our website, so it's an easy access from our website as well.
All right, good. Any other questions, thoughts, or comments? Rose, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your vote. Thank you. Excellent, excellent. Public comments, thoughts, good for the organization? Have I forgotten anything? We forget anything?
Nope. Motion.
Didn't miss anything. Motion to adjourn.
Some of them.
Second. All right, boy. There's no problem with that one, was it? No. Thank you, everybody.